Hey, Gulf Community Church, my name is Josh and I'm the lead pastor here. Thank you so much for joining. This morning we just wrapped up our services here, and man, the weather was crazy. We had tornado watches. There were still some who made their way out here, and we had an awesome day. We had awesome, energetic, full time of music. We had amazing things going on in our family ministry environments, and we started a brand new message series called Engage. Last week, we finished up our 3-part message series called A Better Question, which prompted us to ask, how can we become a means to an end that doesn't end in ourselves? And more specifically, ask the question, what breaks our heart? What are those things that we've seen in the world that we just can't unsee, that we want to do something about it? And today begins a series called Engage, where we'll focus on that right there. What can we do about it? What would it look like to serve those around us? And today we did message number 1 in that series, and I'm so looking forward to you hearing it now. Before we do that, I'll remind you that we are soon to be moving to a new rental location. I'm here right now at the Naples Conference Center at Naples Area Board of Realtors. We've been renting this space for a while, but we only now have one more time next week here, and after that we'll be moving to Laurel Oak Elementary, and that'll be February 18th is our first service there. But until then, enjoy, and we'll see you in person next week here for part 2 of Engage. Bye. That said, well, we are excited because last week we wrapped up our 3-part message series called A Better Question. It prompted us to think about how we can become a means to an end that doesn't end with us. And we asked the question, what breaks our heart? You know, what are those things that we've seen in the world that we just can't unsee, and we want to do something about it? And today, we're starting a brand new message series, a 4-part series called Engage. And it will be all about that. We'll be exploring what it means to do something about it. And we'll even explore practical opportunities of how we can do something about it by serving those around us, even locally within our context at Gulf Community Church. We at Gulf Community Church want and desire to become what we call irresistible. We want to become a church where both churched and unchurched people love to attend, because we're so reaching them with the love and the truth of Jesus. And that's our desire. And we at Gulf Community Church want to do something big in Naples. We want to do something great. And doing great things, or greatness, is actually what we're going to be talking about specifically here this morning. We all are attracted to greatness. This is something that begins early in childhood. Just think of how kids love superheroes, right? If you loved superheroes when you were a kid and you're willing to admit it, would you just raise your hand so I can know we're all in good company? Okay, yeah, almost every hand went up. So whether it was the superhuman strength of Superman, or maybe Batman's fighting skills, or maybe the speed and ability to fly of Wonder Woman, kids love this stuff, and they imagine themselves even as superheroes, channeling those superpowers. And kids not only revere these qualities in their favorite characters, but oftentimes they desire to become great themselves for real. Oftentimes this comes in the form of sports, right? My sister is a good example of this. She was always a good runner growing up, and over time she got better and better at running and worked hard to get really good at it. And this is my chance to brag about her, because that desire to become great at running has continued for her even in her adult life. And just yesterday she was in Orlando competing at the Olympic trials for the marathon event. and accomplished something great. I'm so proud of her. She came in 24th place among all the women. This is a girl who is not paid to run. She's not technically a professional yet, not technically sponsored by some massive company. She's a full-time mom, but she's worked hard at becoming great. And she really has achieved true greatness as a runner, and I'm so proud of her and so happy for her and the accomplishments that she's doing. I too wanted to become great when I was a kid. I don't really have a story like that to tell. Can't really live up to my sister. But I wanted to be a great baseball player. Baseball was my thing. It was my life. And every free hour I had, I was outside throwing the ball with my dad or hitting the wiffle ball with the wiffle bat. I wanted to get good at the game. Probably the epitome of our commitment to the game was that although we lived in a cold climate in Massachusetts, every January 1st, you'd see us out in the road in front of our house throwing that baseball as hard and as far as we possibly could to shake the cobwebs off and get ready for that spring baseball season. That's how committed we were to the game and how much I wanted to get good at it, how I wanted to become great. And not to brag, but I got pretty good. Okay, I was pretty good at baseball. Now, of course, I was 12, so not much to really brag about, but I brag about it anyway. And my claim to fame was that in my final year of Little League, this is like, we're talking little stuff here. In my final year of Little League, my claim to fame is that I hit 13 over-the-fence home runs. And as I remember, and maybe I just made this up, but as I remember, I was named MVP of the league that year. My dad will watch this later and tell me if I made it up or if it was true. And so I was thinking, man, I'm pretty good at this. And in my 12-year-old brain, I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to go pro, baby. Visions of Major League Baseball, MLB, were coming into my vision. And I was thinking, yeah, I'm going to take this thing all the way. I was going to be the next Babe Ruth. I knew the rest of my life, the whole plan at that point. And then I got to the next league up. You know, you're like the best at one point, and then you move up to the next league. And it's like going from like middle school, and suddenly you're a freshman in high school, and everything changes. For me, I got into the next league up, and everything changed. I realized there are other kids just as good at baseball as I was, or even better, and the field got bigger. That fence goes a lot further back in the next league up. I never did hit another over-the-fence home run, and I never was, again, named MVP of the league. And so, needless to say, my passion for the game faded a bit, and my interest turned to other things. But what never changed was my desire to become great. I knew even at an early age, I wanted to be great. Whatever I put my hands to in this life, I will be great at it. And I think for all of us, in some sense and in some way, that has always been true. Maybe for us as adults, as we've kind of left our childhood desires and dreams behind, we get into adulthood and our desire to become great remains, but the form that it takes changes, doesn't it? I mean, I'm not sitting here as an adult still thinking that I want to be the next Babe Ruth. Actually, that's a bad example. I would still love to be the next Babe Ruth. But honestly, I'm these days thinking more about becoming a great dad. I don't want to just be a husband. I want to be a great husband. I don't want to just go to the gym. I want to be great at the gym. I don't want to just be a good manager. I want to be a great leader. I want to be great. And I think for all of us, even as adults, we all do desire to be great in some form or fashion. It's something that's true of really all humans and has been that way for hundreds and even thousands of years. In fact, it was true in Jesus' day. Now, Jesus was pretty great, wasn't he? I mean, he was pretty much the epitome of greatness. But what's interesting is that as we look at the people that were around him, even his closest followers, they didn't just admire his greatness, they wanted some of that greatness for themselves too. And that's where they let themselves get into a bit of trouble. Think about his disciples. Now, if you're new to the Bible, the word disciple means follower. So think of his followers. There were these scenes early in Jesus' ministry when he was walking around and inviting specific individuals to come follow him. In other words, he was calling disciples to himself. Now, this was not a unique tradition or practice to Jesus. This was a traditional first century Judaism practice that rabbis or teachers of the day would go and call individuals to come follow them as disciples. And the idea of the discipleship relationship was that the disciple would leave everything behind and would come and literally follow the rabbi around as they lived. Every move they made, the disciple would follow. And the idea was that each rabbi had a way that they thought about the world. They were teaching Judaism, but they were also putting their personal taste around it. They were teaching the disciple their way of approaching the world, their way of approaching work, their way of seeing everything, their worldview. The way of the rabbi was being passed on to the disciple. Well, Jesus called 12 disciples, and these disciples now who had come from anonymity were now, by association with Jesus, enjoying some level of greatness. And that's because as a first century Jewish person, if you got called by a rabbi to be a disciple, there was a certain level of prestige, a certain level of honor that came from being in that position. Just by association, you were, to some extent, great now. But these specific 12 disciples started to see that there was maybe something different here. There might be something more to this rabbi, Jesus, than all of the other rabbis. Jesus didn't just teach, he taught with authority. He didn't just teach, he was doing things. He was performing miracles. And wherever Jesus went, it seemed that a crowd would gather around him. There seemed to be a movement building around Jesus. Jesus, they saw, was a special rabbi. Not only that, they came to start to see that Jesus might be like a really special rabbi. He might be the sent one of God. It's possible that he's the one sent of God to save the whole world, aka the Messiah. We might be following the rabbi of all rabbis. And so these disciples, these 12, were in a position to achieve not just some level of greatness, they were in position to achieve true, like high level, next level greatness. And what was bound to happen, happened. These 12 who realized their childhood dreams of greatness had since passed, let those old desires come back, and they let those desires for personal greatness get the best of them. This was never more clear than in a scene where Jesus was with his disciples walking toward Jerusalem. Now, we're going to read a bit from that scene in just a moment, but let's set it up for a minute. That in itself is a pretty interesting concept, and a surprising one at that. See, at this time in Jesus' ministry, Jesus had built such a following that the religious elites of the day were not happy. Because, to put it simply, people were following Jesus and not so much following them. They saw that as a threat, and they decided they wanted to snuff out the Jesus movement. And in their mind, the best and the easiest way to do it would be to snuff out the leader. They would snuff out Jesus. They planned to kill Jesus. And Jesus knew that. So it's interesting choice that Jesus in this moment was walking toward where all of the religious leaders and teachers were. They were walking toward Jerusalem. And as they're walking, Jesus says this, "We are going up to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man," talking about himself, "will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law." So he's starting to predict his own death. Now, he had done this before. He had sort of hinted at it, and his disciples, it seemed like it just went right over their head. They weren't paying attention, or they didn't get it, and now he's saying it again. Now, however, he'll go into greater detail. Interestingly, he talks about being delivered here. The very one who would deliver him to their hands was in this moment listening to his words, Judas, one of the disciples. But that said, now Jesus is going to provide even greater detail about how he would die. He says, "They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him and spit on him, flog him, and kill him." Whew, this is getting serious. This is heavy stuff. And it's interesting that Jesus is choosing to go into such detail about how he would die. But he doesn't stop there. He adds this detail now. 3 days later, he will rise. What? What kind of absurd statement is that, Jesus? No one would dare say that. Why would you say that? He adds this amazing detail that not only would he die, but he would rise from the dead. He would have a resurrection. And by the way, as an aside here, if you're here today, you're in church, but you're not so sure that you're a church person, maybe you're struggling with Christianity or still trying to figure out what you think of all of it. Maybe you've been hurt by a Christian, or you've seen someone get hurt by a Christian. Maybe in your estimation, you're not so sure that Christianity has done more good than harm. If you're struggling with it, maybe for good reason, I would encourage you to wrestle with this right here. Keep it simple. There was a guy who predicted his own death. Now, this is all just basic, historically verifiable fact. Any good secular historian would verify this. He predicted his own death in great detail and predicted that after he died, he would rise from the dead. And he said it in great detail. And then he died just the way he said he would. And then he rose from the dead just the way he said he would. And that is something I've never been able to shake. I might not understand all of it, and I might not like what I see sometimes in people, but I can't shake that. And my thought is always, I'm going to believe whatever that guy says. Wrestle with that. But back to our story now. The disciples who were hearing this, once again, it just goes way over their head. They don't get it. They're either not understanding or they're too preoccupied with their own selfish thoughts. We don't know why, but they just don't understand it. And that's why there's no disciple like on the very first moment of the third day, like standing there with their watch shouting, "All right, guys, he's about to come out of the tomb now. 10, 9, 8. Like there was no countdown happening with fireworks ready. They were not expecting Jesus to come tearing out of that tomb because they didn't get what he was saying here. They just didn't get it. And in that space of not understanding, it gets really fun. Check out what happens next. Then James and John, two of the disciples, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do for us whatever we ask." That's comical. Like, I can't hardly even believe this is in the Bible. Really, you guys? It's like they're saying, yeah, sorry to hear about all the spitting and the mocking and flogging and dying and all of that. Yeah, that sounds rough. Sorry about that. But we need a favor. Really? That's the response? Jesus just told you that he's about to go through the most painful, the most excruciating, the most humiliating experience a person could go through at that time. And all you can do is just wait for him to shut up so you can ask your question? Wow. But Jesus knows what they're getting at, so he plays along and says, "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. And they replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." I mean, after all that stuff, after all the spitting and mocking and flogging and dying, of course, like after that's all out of the way, and we'll kind of hang in the background for that. But once that's all done, you're going to be like in charge a little bit, and we want to make sure that we're taken care of at that time. So can we like lock this in now? We want to be taken care of when we get to that point. Can we take care of that? Yuck. Yep, these guys, James and John, the guys that we made into saints, the guys that we named babies after. You might even be named after one of these guys. These guys who exhibited selfishness, who seemed to not even care about the well-being of Jesus, but instead really only cared about themselves and ensuring that they would one day be great. These guys. Essentially what they were asking is, can we be great? We know you're going to be great after all that dying stuff. It's like they missed the key point here, the suffering part. They skipped right over it, and they're asking, when you've got your kingdom established and you're in charge and you're great and everything, that's all fine. But we know you'll have like a staff. So can we just be like the top members of the staff? That would be good enough for us. Can we lock that in? It's like they missed the whole point. It's as if they figured like Superman, Jesus would come running over to a phone booth, like throw back his rabbi tunic, expose this M for Messiah, and go tearing through the sky to set up his kingdom. That's not how this is going to work. But for them, that's all they really cared about was what would happen after. They wanted to get taken care of for themselves. And they were essentially saying, can we be great? Our childhood dreams of greatness have long passed, but we're realizing that we're experiencing a bit of greatness by being your disciples now, but we're seeing that there's possibly more available to us. Why not reach higher? Why not go for the gold? They're thinking there's like true greatness available that we want to reach for. We don't want to just like mediocre greatness. We want like LeBron level greatness. We want Babe Ruth level greatness. We want to be truly great. And in the context of that, here's how Jesus responds. Because first of all, the other guys, the 10 remaining, heard about this. When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John because they realized how crazy the request was. Well, this is what Jesus did. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them." In other words, really? You want to be like that? You see the Roman authorities over there that you hate. The way that they rule is kind of the way that you're talking right now. You want to be like them? You really? That's what you want? And then Jesus said this, "Not so with you." Why? Because for them, Jesus was introducing something brand new. Jesus came to introduce something brand new to the world and for the world. He didn't come to institute Judaism 2.0 or just the second half of a book or some little tweak. He came to change all of it. And he continues, instead, whoever wants to become great among you, and they all bend over and listen in with great intrigue. And I would say to us now, Gulf Community Church, is there anyone here who wants to be great? You want to do something great with your life? You want to leave your mark on this world? You want to be great? Listen in. Whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. Servant? The disciples are probably thinking, servants aren't great. Servants serve great people. Kings are great. Lords are great. Rich people are great. And Jesus is teaching them that may be true in the world's economy, but not in God's economy. The greatest in the eyes of God are those who choose to serve others. Jesus is saying the greatest in the eyes of God are those who choose to serve others. I feel it bears repeating. The greatest in the eyes of God are those who choose to serve others. And before the disciples had a chance to argue with him, Jesus continues and says this, for the Son of Man, talking about himself, even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. When Jesus gave his life on the cross, among other things, he was serving you and serving me. He was taking death so that we would have the opportunity to not have to face spiritual eternal death. We would have the opportunity to face eternal spiritual life. So in his death, he was serving. Catch this. In his own death, Jesus was teaching his disciples a lesson. And we can say it for ourselves now too. In his death, Jesus was teaching us a lesson. It's as if this was the culmination of the discipleship process. The disciples had learned so many lessons by this point, and in his death, Jesus was giving the final lesson. It's as if, hey, if you didn't get it before, every time I told you about it, get it now. The Jesus way is all about serving. If discipleship is learning the way of the rabbi, the Jesus way that he was putting onto his followers, and now we are getting put onto us, the Jesus way is serving others. And he set the example for that in his own death. I don't know about you, but I want to be considered a true Jesus follower. And if I want that to be true, my life must be marked by servanthood, because that is the Jesus way. So here's a recipe for greatness. Last place is the greatest place. To serve is greater than being served. and living for others is living like Jesus. Now, if you've been around church for a while, this might not seem like anything new to you. And if that's the case, great. Because sometimes the most profound thing about a message is how you're going to apply it. This is the Jesus way, so I ask you to consider this week, how can I serve those around me at home in a new way this week? How could I serve my spouse in a new way this week? How could I serve my kids in a new way this week? Is there a way in which I know I know that they could be served, but I haven't been bringing it? How can I serve them this week and in doing look more like Jesus? At work, how can I go into work and ask how not how I can be served, but how can I serve my coworkers, my boss, my customers? And in my community, ask the question, how can I serve those around me rather than coming just to be served? This is the way. This is the Jesus way. Because the greatest in the eyes of God are those who choose to serve others. Well, one of the ways we get to serve is to serve our community. And we want to make it really easy at Gulf Community Church to give you opportunities to serve the community through what we're attempting to do in this community. I talked before about how we're attempting, by God's grace, to do great things in Naples. We want to reach our community with the love and truth of Jesus. And so we have lots of opportunities right here in our church body for you to participate in that all-important mission. And for the next 4 weeks of this series, starting today, we'll pause at the end of the message to highlight an area of our church and the programming and the ministry that goes along with that, and how you might consider participating. We want to get really practical each week in these 4 weeks. And so today, I'm going to now highlight, for the next few minutes, one area of our church body called family ministry. Family ministry is the word we use for all of the programming around the youngest ages in our church community. So all children all the way through college age. And the way it works here is we have, for the youngest children, ages 6 weeks through pre-K 5, a program called Wambaland. And then we have, for the next age group up, K5 through 5th grade, we have programming called Upstreet. Let's pause there for a moment, because Wambaland and Upstreet are unique in that they happen every single Sunday at the same time that the adults are meeting. So just beyond these walls right now, both Upstreet and Wambaland are meeting. Those are particularly unique as well because they require the most hands on deck. Takes a lot of volunteer power to make those programs happen. We want to make sure we have the right ratios of adults to children. And we also know that there's a lot of growth happening already in those areas. We're starting to see record numbers of children there, and we expect that to continue. As you may or may not know, we're about to move to a new location in a couple of weeks. There, that will strategically place us to be able to reach more young families, and we expect that the children's areas will grow exponentially. And in order to pull it off well, we'll need lots of hands on deck. And that said, Kylie tells me that in those areas we're in dire need already of lots of help. So the greatest ways to help in those areas are to be a children's teacher, a helper in the classroom, or someone who can care for babies. And I would ask you to consider, is this something that you could help out with? It doesn't have to be a big commitment. It can be very infrequent, whatever works well for your schedule. You might say that I'm not a teacher, I can't teach kids. Well, I would ask you, can you show up and just be a helper? Be an adult presence for kids every once in a while? Can you help care for children? Can you help care for babies? or maybe you're willing to be a teacher and you just don't know how, we are able to walk you through how to do it, and believe me, it's not that hard. Kylie tells me we've got all the resources available for you to learn how to do it, and you'll learn quick. Would you be willing to at least talk about it a little bit? I would ask you to consider if that's something that might interest you to talk more about. So beyond just creating an environment for children where they just find it so engaging and so fun that they begging their parents to come back every week. Beyond that, we have now working our way up through the age groups. We also then have transit. This is our middle school environment. Today, we don't have transit. We did in the past, and we haven't been running it in a while. I want to relaunch our middle school programming, transit, very soon. I also want to launch for the first time Inside Out, which is our high school programming. Generally, these work on a bi-weekly basis. It's usually like on a Sunday afternoon. All of those in those age groups come together and hang out together and learn about Jesus together. And I want to launch those soon in the next several months if possible. But in order to do that, we need some help. And if you'd say, hey, I could maybe help a bit in those age groups, would you consider talking to me about just brainstorming how, when, and where we might do that? And after Inside Out, which is high school, we moved to the young adults and college age. And my desire is to launch some small groups for those ages later this year as well. But in order to do that, we'll need hosts, we'll need facilitators. And if that's something where you'd say, hey, I would love to help with that age group, I think I might have something to offer, I would love to talk with you. And so we're on the brink of doing something exciting, something big here at Gulf Community Church, but we need all hands on deck to make it happen. I keep saying lately, we can't do this with just me, Brett, and Kylie on staff. It won't happen. We need you to be a part of it. And so starting right now and over the next 4 weeks, we're going to put these cards on your chairs. You probably saw them when you came in. I'd ask you now to take those out if you feel comfortable, just in indicating that you'd like to learn more. No commitment. Learn more about one of these areas. We would love to contact you later this week to have that kind of discussion. So I'd ask you before you leave, take out that card, check off the box that you'd be interested in talking about, put your contact info there, and drop it off in the back. Furthermore, and I think there was even a QR code that we can throw up here if you want to take a picture of it and indicate that online. But let's bring it home, because I think what we're all wondering at the heart of this is this just like a nice thing to say, or is this real? Like, can I really be great? Can I really be great? And the answer is absolutely yes, if you change your perspective to match what Jesus said is the way. Greatness is defined, skip to the next one, and the next one. True greatness isn't defined by what we get, but through how we give and how we live. That's the Jesus way definition of greatness. Yes, you can be great, but it comes through serving. I encourage you, whether it's through helping in family ministry or in your everyday life, to ask the question, how can I live the Jesus way today? Because the greatest in the eyes of God are those who choose to serve others. Would you pray with me? Lord God, we thank you so much for the truth about what you did in your death. You served us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And furthermore, Jesus, we thank you for showing us the way. We ask you, Lord, that you'd help us to serve those around us, to live out the Jesus way, to live like you died by serving the world around us. We love you, Lord. We ask for your help, and we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.